I'd like to call the work session to order and I'd like to call up on FPD 20-002 site plan 580 Dewdrop Circle, Forest Park Apartments, 40 by 64 accessory structure. Mr. Anderson, would you present that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
I'm here.
Okay,
All right,
I'm
Chair.
doing good. How y'all?
can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful.
This is actually a fairly simple request.
No, he's doing good. To tell you the truth, he's on another Zoom call.
Okay, excuse me, Chris. Lewis, we're getting
Yes.
feedback from somebody that's in your house there. If you want to mute your mic while somebody's talking, and then you can unmute when it's your time, that's okay too. Whatever you like to do.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Lewis. Okay,
That's-
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, and that's generally a good idea for anybody that's not talking. So Forest Park Apartments, they would like to build a maintenance building to house all of the equipment that they use to maintain the apartment complex. And the location that they've selected is basically a central location near the apartment main office and the swimming pool for the community. And that location is also where they took out earlier this year a tennis court. And you can, if you've been over there, you can see that the excavated area where the tennis court once was. The building would go approximately in that location, although it would be the rectangle of the building would be turned 90 degrees so that part of the building was at the end of the parking lot. I have no objection to the concept, but the building itself it's a metal building without any windows, just an overhead door and then a regular door on the one side, and with metal siding, metal roof, no eaves to speak of. It's too utilitarian of a building. It's something that we would really only see in a manufacturing zone, and not in the PR3 zone where the apartments are located. Has spoken with the management team at the apartment complex and the contractor about this, and I think there's a willingness to enhance the building, but they haven't submitted anything beyond what we have. And so with what we have, I don't recommend that be approved. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Dr. Bunton, do you have any comments on this?
I don't know if he's back yet.
Yeah, we'll move.
That's,
Here we go. You're up.
you have to do that.
No comment.
Okay. And Mr. Smith is not here. Mayor Johnson?
Only that I've read through all the materials, and obviously I've been by that area. My question would be for Mr. Anderson, and I think he answered that. I saw, Chris, where you had told them what they needed to do, but at this point, have they responded to you in terms of what kind of enhancements you had suggested that they make?
We've had meetings and phone calls, but that's it.
So they haven't submitted anything other than what we've got?
That's correct.
Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, actually just wanted to piggyback off of the mayor's comments. Mr. Anderson, you said they haven't submitted any like amendments to the proposed development, because it looks like the add-ons that you were suggesting aren't excessive or necessarily financially burdensome. Just like mason foundry course, alternate siding material, some window openings, and extending the roof eaves. Like they haven't. When was this submitted?
Actually, it was first submitted back in February.
Okay.
And then it sat on hold for a while, possibly related to the coronavirus. I don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke most recently with them about, I would say 3 weeks ago.
Okay. And they haven't even mentioned that they were going to even take note of the recommendations from, the city's planning director?
Well, they mentioned that they would.
Okay.
But we haven't gotten anything. So,
okay.
And we can't, from a legal standpoint, we can't just sit on applications. We have to move them forward at some point.
Right.
So.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that would be my only question. So yeah, I'm good then.
Thanks, Mr. Brown. Dr. Anaforo? Susan, you have to turn your mic back on.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, I was going to ask a question that has been answered now. My question was going to be, this sounds familiar, like something we discussed in the past. So Mr. Anderson answered it. Yes, we did discuss this in the past.
I may have mentioned it when they were first applying, but this is the first time it's come before you formally.
Really? Okay, it sounds familiar though.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Anaforo. Mr. Bradley?
No, I have no further questions.
Okay, I see Mr. Smith is with us now. If he could unmic or unmute, and if he has any comments. Mr. Smith, do you have any comments for us? If you do, you have to unmute your screen. Okay, we can go back to him before we close this. Is there anybody here that is on the conference with us that would like to speak about this item from possibly the owner, or developer, or architect? If there is, would you please unmic and tell us what you'd like to tell us about the project?
Mr. Chair, the people I see on here, I recognize them as all being from other projects.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. My only comment is that I agree with everything that's been said. I believe that maybe rather than voting this down, it would be better to table it for a future date and let them bring it back. I know this ownership group has put a lot of money into this project over, in the last few years, and I know they want to make it as nice as possible. And I think we should try to keep up as good a relationship as we can rather than just voting it down. That's what I'd like to see us do on this particular item. Are there any other comments from any of the other commissioners?
No, I would agree with that.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to FPD 20-006, a special exception at 11130 Hamilton Avenue, rainstorm car wash. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is on the agenda for this same project is on the agenda for two separate approvals. So with your leave, I'll take them both together. The special exception and development plan. Special exception is the zoning approval for the use at this location. So it would be to allow a car wash at 11130 Hamilton Avenue. And that location is in front of the Civic Center Plaza along Hamilton, across from the library, and across the main driveway of the shopping center from Frisch's Big Boy. This is what's known as a tunnel car wash. It's a fully automated car wash where your car goes through on a conveyor. The driver stays behind the wheel and reassumes control of the car at the end of the wash. And then they provide, with the cost of the car wash, vacuum cleaners, compressed air, window cleaner. That it's a nice setup. The company is Rainstorm Car Wash, and they have locations mostly in Illinois, but also in Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. And the nearest location to this one is in Westchester on Tylersville Road. So with regard to a special exception, there are a few things to look at with a car wash. And going through the one by one through the criteria, I don't think I won't take so much time to do that. But just simply point out that I do feel like that even with issues that might arise, and I'm thinking of litter and possibly noise, those can be controlled, and it's a matter of that it's always staffed, which it will be, and that the staff pay attention to the cleanliness of the lot regarding litter. Regarding noise, for this location, I don't consider that to be an issue. Any sound that came from the mechanicals of the car wash, the water, the vacuum cleaners, is not so great that it is unusual for the area. This is near the interchange, the Hamilton Avenue interchange with I-275, so you have a lot of highway noise in the area, and there are no residences anywhere near. The nearest residences are the probably apartments at Meadowood, and those are a good 1,500 feet to 2,000 feet away, which is, about a third of a mile. So with regard to the special exception, I recommend that be approved. One other thing is that the Forest Park does not have this type of car wash currently. We do have a couple of different kinds of car washes, and there's a completely self-serve one on Southland Road, just north of Northland Boulevard. And that's the kind that has the corral. You put your coins in, you get a brush and some soapy water, and you get to do all the washing. And then at a couple of gas stations, they have probably miniature versions of this type of car wash, where you can, with your gas purchase, run your car through that. They don't tend to work as well in getting the car clean. So that's my recommendation on the special exception. I do feel like they have met the criteria, and I recommend that it be approved. Turning to the development plan, just point out a couple of things about the development plan. For the site, this will be accessed from the main shopping center drive, and that would be the driveway that goes from Hamilton, runs behind Frisch's and the former Arby's, McDonald's, over to Waycross. And that driveway, you would enter, if you're coming from Hamilton, you would make a left into the car wash. There is probably just enough stacking area for a busy day. I measured it off as probably 15 cars could wait while cars are going through to pay. On a spring day, when it's the first nice day after a month of bad weather, car washes can get really crowded. But that stacking area, if it did overflow, would not immediately overflow onto Hamilton Avenue, which is good. But it, as I said, it is probably the minimal amount of stacking that we would want to see. The zoning code doesn't provide a specific number for that. We have it for drive-throughs on restaurants and some other uses. So what you have is a one-way in. You go in, you have to pay, go through the car wash, then you can go into the vacuum area. Those vacuums are provided gratis with the car wash, so they're not unrestricted as far as entry. And then it's a one-way out, and that is controlled by a gate. The traffic flow looks fine. The landscaping plan is done by a landscape architect that we are familiar with. She's done several other projects in Forest Park. I'm happy with the landscape plan. It does appear to be well landscaped and I think attractively. And that's really all the comments I have on that. Because of the size and orientation of the lot, and because we have a 50-foot building setback, they're not quite able to meet the 35-foot open space setback along the road. And I think that may be partly due to the state acquiring some additional right-of-way a few years ago for Hamilton Avenue. But with the landscape treatment in the front and really on all sides, I think that would be an acceptable modification on a development plan. One other thing to note is the Oberer company, who they own the undeveloped land to the north, requested a copy of the plans, and I spoke with their representative, Greg Smith, on the phone about the project, and they just wanted everyone to be aware that they have an easement that runs basically alongside this property, meaning access to their property would sort of go around this lot, and they wanted to make sure that was not going to be disturbed or blocked, and it doesn't appear to be. That would be essentially a private matter between property owners, not something that the city would be enforcing, but certainly something to be aware of in this development plan approval. And then finally, we have the building elevations. And when I wrote the staff report, it was, I may have been a little bit mistaken, but I think that my recommendation still holds. We had two sets of elevation drawings, both labeled A2. The first has basically a plain treatment of all of the walls, and with a surfacing of CMU split face block. The second sheet, which is actually labeled for Tylersville Road, has a much nicer treatment with columns. I apologize. I'm going to move inside because it's getting really loud out here. It was nice.
You need to move to Forest Park. We don't have those kinds of problems.
All right.
Right.
This is where I am, is just off of Hamilton Avenue, in fact. So the second sheet is it has the address of the Tylersville Road location of Rainstorm Carwash. And if you had been to that location to see, you would recognize that. And again, a much nicer treatment. That was actually only included to show us where they wanted to put their signs. However, I think that we ought to get a Rainstorm Carwash as nice as the one in Westchester. That is as simply as I can put it. And so I would recommend that we make that a condition of approval. And that would be on the development plan. And if you just bear with me a moment, I'm going to switch screens to make sure I hit all my points. So this is a fairly long staff report. Right, and so then the other thing about the development plan, there is a dumpster area near the edge of the lot. It would be entered from outside the lot. So it'd have its own sort of little drive and apron. That does have to be enclosed on three sides by a solid wall. That's in our zoning code, but it should be noted in any approval. And that would conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Aronson,
Yes.
I have a question for you and or Mr. Anderson. I'm looking at the map that's on the first page of the report of the special exception. And if I'm coming down Waycross toward Hamilton Avenue, I'm going to turn into the drive that actually goes between, I guess that's, it's behind, well, actually that auto parts store. Is that the drive you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, then if I go on down, I'm going to be going behind Frisch's. Now, is this, I'm trying to pinpoint exactly where this is, because that drive goes on around and it comes out to Hamilton Avenue right by Frisch's, right?
No.
Yeah.
So is this, I see you have a little red spot here that says site. So is this on the other side of the drive from Frisch's?
That's correct.
Okay, now my concern would be what that's gonna do to, I'm up there almost every day. If you are familiar with that drive, cars coming down Hamilton Avenue and turning right into that drive, there's a little bit of a divider where if you're going out of that drive toward 275, there's a little bit of a divider. As a matter of fact, that's where the big sign is.
Right.
So now I'm a little bit concerned about traffic backup. Now, are you saying that the only way that you can get into this car wash coming off Hamilton Avenue is that you're going to turn into that drive? A right turn is much easier. A left turn is much harder if you're coming from 275.
Right.
And then there's a very short distance there where you would turn into that car wash area, which means that people who are just coming into that drive and not going to that car wash where are the cars that are waiting in line to go through the car wash, where are they going to be on that drive? Because there's also, this is on the same side of the drive as the Chinese restaurant, right?
Yes.
So where's the overflow backup line for people who are waiting to go into the car wash? Are they going to be actually on the drive, or are they going to be, like you said, normally if there are not too many cars, I'm assuming that they can be on the drive, on the actual property of the car wash. But if there is a lot of cars that they're out there on that drive, it's going to make getting out of there to go down to Hamilton Avenue, especially to make a right turn, real tough. Now, and I'm trying to think, and somebody can help me with this, I'm not even sure you can make a left turn out of that drive to go the other way on Hamilton Avenue.
You're not supposed to, no.
Yeah, so yeah, the traffic part of it is the only concern that I have. It's going to be either way you look at it, it's going to be a real tight thing to do. So now, is there going to be another exit where they could go behind the buildings in that shopping center?
Actually, you could, because you can do that now. That's not. That wouldn't. Well, I mean that is a way you can go. There is a continuous drive that runs behind those buildings.
To me, that would be easiest to do. Would be to go by. I haven't gone back there lately. I don't know what kind of shape that drive is behind those buildings, but it would be to me. It would be easier to come behind those buildings and go out another way than trying to come out into that drive that goes out to Hamilton Avenue. Because, like I said, that's already tight. That's a tight spot.
Yes, it is. And one reason for that is I mentioned limited access right of way, and that is the Ohio Department of Transportation, what they have around interstates. And it extends beyond the actual ramps of the interstate for a distance. This is the reason that the Ober company has that easement for access, because that's the only access they can get. They're basically landlocked otherwise.
Yeah.
So you're correct. Only two comments that I would offer on that are that coming into the shopping center from Hamilton, I have to check that. I'm sorry. In one of those directions, there are 2 lanes, and I think the other direction there's 1.
Yeah, recently, and I don't know, Chris, seems to me this has been maybe a year or 2 ago when they did the construction work on widening Hamilton Avenue.
Yes.
You're coming down Hamilton toward 275. The very far right lane is a turn-only lane.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can only turn in there from that lane. It would almost make more sense to go down to the light, turn left on Waycross, and go in from that way than trying to come the other way off Hamilton Avenue.
Well, and that's what I was that's sort of what I was getting to, which is, I think people that have local knowledge know that.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do I don't usually come from that direction if I'm going to this area. I'm usually coming from Waycross.
Right.
But that left turn is difficult because it comes right after the interchange.
Yep.
And it's a property that doesn't have the easiest access, really.
Well, the final thing that I will say, Chris, is I am familiar with their shop over, I think it's Tylersville Road in Westchester.
Mhm.
That's nice. if they're willing to do something that nice, then I'm fine with it. You know, obviously traffic is going to be a little bit of a problem, but I agree. I think we ought to insist that it be at least as nice as, because anything short of that, you know, I don't want just another junky car wash, I guess is right, to put it bluntly.
Right. And I agree. There's only so much you can do with a rectangular box.
Right.
But I think that they did a very nice job with the presentation on that in Westchester.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised the first time I went over there after hearing about this application was going to be coming in. I think it looks as nice as any car wash that I've seen, maybe other than out in Los Angeles. Some of the like 50s sort of, you know, modern designs they have out there. So to address your other comment, the driveway is not striped well enough, unfortunately, to really show it. But there should be room for, if a car was waiting to turn left into the car wash, there should be room for another car to go around it on the right.
Could be, yeah.
Is the
Okay.
best. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Button, comments?
No comments.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Button. Mr. Smith?
No comments.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
Just really quick on the issue of traffic, because I was thinking the same thing, but I just pulled up a map. If someone were to be coming from Hamilton Avenue heading southbound, there does to be like a left turn median. So they would essentially go to the middle of the lane. So there would still be traffic being able to flow down Hamilton Avenue. They just would have to watch for oncoming traffic going northbound. But it does seem tight. However, because there is the median in the middle, and they do have the ability to pull past, I guess, China Island takeout if they come out, because the as I understand the plan, the exit is towards, you know, the other commercial businesses, so they would have space to essentially pull through the rest of that parking lot. But that would be my only comment, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Dr. Anaforo?
Yeah, for me, I believe coming in through Waycross will be a better option. Coming in from Waycross and then exiting on Hamilton Avenue.
Thank you, Dr. Anaforo. Mr. Bradley?
Yes, I think the only way you can go out of that drive is on the Hamilton Avenue would be northbound.
Yes, that's correct.
Inbound, you go to Frisch's, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it depends on how far back is the car wash, the cars in the line, you know what I mean? Will it come out on the private property?
Well, it's impossible to say until it actually.
In other words, how many cars will they be allowed to have on their property in the line waiting? And like, you know, if they say 10, 12 cars in a row waiting to get through or what?
The applicant is online in this meeting, so maybe a better question for him.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's hold up questions from him right now until we all finish, then we can go back. Mr. Bradley, do you have any other questions for him?
No, I was just trying to picture that road in back of Frisch's, that main road there. There's also another road to go other way around that to Ollie's toward that way.
Yes.
And so I don't know how much the traffic pattern is going to be. Not that 100,000 people are going to be in the cars, but you know what I mean? Are they going to go out that drive, or are they going to go past alleys, or you know what I mean?
I do think if there's any concern with backing up traffic, it's going to be on Hamilton and not necessarily in the shopping center itself or on Waycross.
Okay, fine. That's
Thank
all
you,
I
Mr.
have.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Reason I don't want to bring in the applicant yet, I'm waiting to hear all of our concerns, and then he can address them. I agree with a lot what was said. The question I have, Mr. Anderson, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it Oberman's property? Is that the name, or?
Oberer.
Oh, okay, Oberer. That has to go through this same cut that we're coming off of Hamilton Avenue into the shopping center, and then it goes behind the proposed car wash. Is that correct?
Yes, essentially it would be between the shopping center building where the Chinese restaurant is, and this site.
Right, but I mean, they would come in off of Hamilton Avenue in that right in, right out, and come back past the car wash, and then go behind the car wash between the existing building to get to their property.
Yes.
And there's no change to that configuration than it was if there's nothing ever built here. That would be their only ingress and egress.
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I know that's been an issue years ago about, getting in and out of that property, and it's been a tough piece of property to develop. And the state has standards as far as what they're going to allow. I agree. I think sometimes, an applicant is asking for a special exception, which means, we have to make a special exception to allow them there. And I don't think it's unrealistic to expect the same quality and type of building that's on Tylersville as there is, for our community. I've seen the one on Tylersville. As everybody has commented, it's a very nice facility. I mean, it stands out, and I think they put it in somewhat of a little bit of a depressed spot with the Steak and Shake up there and a couple other things that went out. But I mean, it stands out as a real jewel, and I would hope that maybe that could help that shopping center and everything up there. So I would be in favor of exactly what you stated, Mr. Anderson, that this building should be the same as Tylersville, and it should be actually put into the motion. I think you have in there plans dated such and such. I think we can leave that in and also add into the fact that it would be the same as the Tylersville location. That would be mine. Now, if there's anybody here that would like to speak about this project, if you could please speak and tell us your name and what your affiliation with this project is.
This is Rob Painter. I'm with our VP Engineering. I'm the civil engineer for the project, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the application and the owner.
Hey, Mr. Painter, thank you very much. And if you go ahead and present to us and hopefully answer any of the possible questions that you heard from the commissioners.
Thank you. I'd be happy to. So again, my name is Rob Painter, 6230 Center Park Drive, Westchester, Ohio, 45069. I'm the president of RVP Engineering. We're a civil engineering and surveying outfit. We're excited to be in this location to be potentially a member of the Forest Park community. Rainstorm's developing 10 to 12 of these tunnel car washes in the greater Cincinnati area. Do you want me to turn on my camera? Or it's no great thing, trust me, but if you'd be more comfortable seeing somebody talk.
I think that would be good, Mr. Painter.
Okay, I'll do that if I can figure out how to do that. Start video. Okay. Plus my yellow shirt's pretty loud, so it's hard to miss me. So we're happy to be part of this process. As we're doing about 10 to 12 of these. Westchester is built. The one in Hamilton is on its way. There's one in Amelia that's operational. And there are several other sites that we're looking at across the city and down into northern Kentucky. This site in particular, as you've mentioned, is challenging from an access point and just some of the particulars of this project. You know, there's some utilities going across there that go to the China place that we have to move. Some easements that we have to deal with that we're dealing with. But to talk about the circulation pattern, so the access point here on Hamilton Avenue, and I'm pointing to my other screen, sorry, is a no left out. So it's a right in, a left in, and a right out. So those people that come in from that direction will then have to turn left into the site. We have room, as Chris mentioned, for about 15 to 16 cars can stack in front of the building waiting to get in, with an additional 3 in those 3 parking spaces down there, which are the bug washes or the bug cleaners. So you pull in, you scrape off some of the stuff that you want to get off, and then you pull in back into line. So total of about 19 spaces on site ahead of the building. They cycle 1 car, I think, per every 60 seconds, maybe. So that, you know, there's a pretty good movement through there. There is a connection between the in direction. There's a little curb cut that goes out into the VAC parking lot, and that's the emergency exit in case you say, I've got an emergency, I got to get out of here, or the thing breaks down. It's kind of the breakdown lane to get out. Those spaces have, like Chris mentioned, vacuums, pressurized air, little carts with spray bottles and hand towels that you can kind of do your own detailing, that are all included in the price of the wash. And there's a gate control at the exit, which makes it so that you got to go through the car wash to use those amenities. The exit then is on the eastern side of the site that points towards the rest of that commercial area and the China Island takeout place. And someone mentioned, and I think they're correct, that the people who live in the area and use this car wash a lot are going to figure out the best way to come is probably from Waycross and behind Frisch's, and use those driveways, because you can't go left out of here. So if you come from Waycross, you're probably going to go back to Waycross. So I covered stacking, access. The dumpster enclosure, I agree, we'll make a 3-sided enclosure out of CMU, no problem there. So I think the hot button issue is really the building treatment. So let me, I guess, describe what my client said to me as far as the difference between this site and the Westchester site. At the Tylersville location, they have a pretty good capture rate. There's a Lowe's right next door. There's another, I think maybe a Walmart across the street, or another big shopping center where people are going there. It's a destination spot. So there is a lot of captured traffic in that area that allows them to spend more on their facility. In this location, even though there's a huge amount of traffic on Hamilton, the capture is smaller. And so for them, in their budgeting, it means that they're not spending as much on their infrastructure as in other locations. That being said, I think that after talking to my client, I can give you more than, or they can give you more than what's shown in the package, but frankly, it's not going to come up to the Westchester level. If I can share a screen, I can show you what they sent to me that they can do, if that'd be okay.
That's fine. If you can share it, go ahead.
So if I raise hand, and maybe Waycross can give me an ability to show something.
I'm working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, you're muted.
Yeah, okay.
I'll ask you a question while we're doing this. Would you say the price of the ground up on Tylersville Road was more expensive than the price of the ground that you're paying on Hamilton Avenue?
I'd say it probably was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would think so.
That, but yeah, probably is.
Okay.
So if I bring, can you guys See that?
Sorry, I don't see it.
Okay.
Still working.
Well, I'll fill the dead space with some air. The original submittal that we turned in, and Chris is correct, we had our proposed building had no parapet wall and no enhanced entry, and it was a pretty plain Jane box for the tunnel car wash. It did have, and it's my fault for putting it in there, I got sent from the architect the sign layout on the Tylersville building. So I should have looked at that. I'll take responsibility for turning that in and maybe causing this expectation delta. That being said, if I can get the video up, I've got a building that the architect sent me that has some increased treatments on the bottom, a parapet wall to add some interest, some faux windows on one side with an enhanced entry, with an architectural stack that makes it look less like a prism.
I've made you co-host, so whatever magical powers you might have are there. That's all I know how to do. Sorry.
Okay. So I'm looking for, is there a share screen? Okay. Share screen 2.
It's coming up, Rob.
Okay.
Okay.
So there is an enhanced treatment along the bottom, a ribbon on top, some faux windows, a better looking entry with a canopy awning out front of the entrance, a window treatment here, gridded type garage door that's closed at night. That's up during the day and in operation and closed at night. But it has the taller entry feature as well. It's a better looking building than what we submitted. Maybe not all the way up to the Tylersville investment level, but it is a better looking building. So hopefully you can appreciate that they're willing to move from what they had. This request that we're making for the special exception is based on the odd shape of the layout of the lot, as well as trying to stay within the building setbacks that were established at 50 feet. So our building is at the 50 feet setback from the north side and from the west side, but we have to put our driveway into the 35-foot green space. It is nicely planted, as Chris mentioned, so that'll offset some of that green space issue. But I guess, and I'm an engineer, I'm not an architect, so sometimes I can be rather blunt and non-polished because I'm not a very good salesman. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to put my cards on the table. We've got to build this store here in this fall, and that means that to hit that schedule, I need a decision from you guys tonight. If you can live with and if you can deal with this building as I've got it shown here and can approve it, and we'll do the 3-side on the dumpster, then we'll be off to the races. If you say no, I want the Tylersville building, then I think the deal's not going to go anywhere. And I'm not threatening. I'm just saying that's what they told me that the situation was. That their owner has a level that he's willing to invest based on the traffic capture he thinks he can get, and this is what he thinks he can do. So hopefully with these additional treatments that you guys will be good with this, and we can bring this car wash to Forest Park, and you guys can enjoy what it is. I like them. I think they do a good job. It's very comparable to a Mike's if you have been to a Mike's before, except you get free vax. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have about the treatments as far as I can answer them and anything about the site.
Yeah, well, Rob, this is Sherman Bradley here. I'd like to know on that end of the is a restaurant, isn't there parking on that roadside?
Just a second.
There's parking where the traffic come in behind Frisch's on that road. Isn't there parking on that road near the string of restaurants and the shopping center?
Is there parking on the road between the restaurants and the parking center?
Chinese restaurant, the Subway, and all that over in that area?
Let me show you, I guess, this view. So here's the Frisch's, here's the China, here's our site in the green.
Okay, well, and back at number 11, isn't that parking back there somewhere? Well, it's not 11, but you know what I mean. The yellow signs, they got the fork and whatever it is. Yeah, right there.
Right here?
Isn't there parking on there?
That parking is for the China restaurant.
Okay, there is parking.
Yeah, there's a few spots there. Yep, there's a few spots here.
Well, is that going to hamper the traffic any?
No, our exit is here.
Okay.
Our entry is closer to here, and our exit's closer to here. So no, we're not interfering with them, and they're not interfering with us.
All right, fine.
Any other questions from commissioners?
How much of this building is brick?
Let me go back to that view. So this is an 8-inch split face CMU with integral colors. This is also, these two bands are also 8-inch split face CMU with an accent color. So it's CMU block. It's 0 brick.
Okay, fine. Does look like Mike's.
Mr. Painter, what was the original building you submitted? What was it? The exterior walls. I've got them all here.
It was CMU, but it had no accent colors. It was just one single color.
The sort of square CMU blocks.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Painter?
Yeah, what exactly will be the difference between your site in Forest Park and the one on Tylersville? What will be the difference?
From what perspective?
Well, we had expressed interest in getting something that's exactly what you have in Tylersville. And if I heard you correctly, you said that the owner is not going to do exactly what they have in Tylersville because they don't have or they don't anticipate as much traffic as the one up in Tylersville. They are not going to do exactly the same thing as they have in Tylersville. So my question is, what will be the difference?
So let me slide down here to the Tylersville drawing. It has a stone bottom. It has brick columns that are faux brick columns, and it has some advanced window treatments. And I guess a fancier entry. That's the Tylersville drawing.
Okay.
I think maybe Ms. Sanafro was asking what's the difference in the traffic numbers.
No, he understood my question because
right.
We had expressed sort of admiration for what they did in Tylersville. We said we wanted something like that. And he said, no, that the owner is not going to spend as much money. The budget is not the same as the one up in Tylersville, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So that's
Right.
why I asked the question. So exactly what will he withhold, or what's he not going to do in Forest Park? What exactly will be the difference in terms
So-
of the structure? And I think he answered the question. He said, you said there won't be any fancy, what?
So it's this building has all CMU, but it has accent colors. You know, those bands of block on the bottom and the block of the band here are going to be a different accent color, probably a blue, a light blue, a sky blue. I don't know. I'm not an architect, so I'm getting out of my depth here. But those bands are going to be the architectural treatments, as well as these faux windows on the one side, as well as windows on the main entry.
What's the estimated price difference?
I don't know that.
Okay, I personally don't know if I can make a decision off of looking on this screen and seeing what it looks like compared to the other one. I mean, I think there are a lot of differences. Again, I go into the fact that when we authorize or, grant a special exception, that, it should be something that's comparable to what they built in other areas. I just think that site and what we're given and the location of it is as good as any with the traffic flow. And if you look at the demographics, they're going to be equally as good, I think, as where the other ones are at, especially the ones in Hamilton and Tylersville. And I just feel that, when you have a building like that, if it's good enough for one area, it should be good enough for all the areas. But I couldn't make a decision off of just seeing these tonight without actual colors and really looking at the difference. But that's just my opinion. So any
This
other
is Rob
questions?
again. Could I make a suggestion, if possible?
Sure.
Could we, if you would consider it, would you consider an approval contingent upon us working with Chris directly and making sure that he's satisfied with the color scheme and with the treatments? I think that could work for us.
Well, I think it's a matter of the commission and what the entire commission thinks. But I mean, his recommendation is pretty clear, that he felt that this should be, he looked at your original design and said, that's not going to go. He probably would have said, not recommended it at all if that was the only design. But since the other one was part of it, we could see it. He went to that point of saying, well, if we could get this, then this makes good sense to do a special exception and take into consideration of some of these other things. I was a developer and I looked at things and I know cost, and you want to try to keep costs as low as you can. But then again, I know probably the land on Tylersville Road was 2 to 3 times as more expensive than the land that this property's, going with. And I think with that and the fact that you're going to work with a community that wants you there, is going to work with everything that they can do to help you, that I think we deserve not any better, but I don't think we deserve any less. Mr. Anderson, you have any comments?
Yes, well, I think that we would probably be at this discussion no matter what. Because what I did is something that you don't even learn in college, which is I looked up the nearest location, or Rob may have mentioned it to me on the phone when he first was talking about the project, and went over there to see just what this was. And so with it sitting there, it's something that we probably would have asked for, whether the plans whether that second sheet of elevation drawings have been in there or not. In terms of the drawing that I see, I would be okay with negotiating. I think, and also in terms of timing, because we do have one or two potential postponements on this agenda because of the differences between what's submitted and what we're looking for, that we could also just do another meeting in July that would help keep people on track and also keep the Planning Commission in the decision loop.
I agree wholeheartedly with you, Mr. Anderson. I think that if they want to come back and make a proposal after working with you, then we can certainly set up another meeting in the next week to 10 days to 14 days, something like that, to get an answer. But
yeah, the Zoom meetings are as difficult as they can be to run. They're pretty easy to set up.
What is your advertising window? How far in advance do you need to advertise for a public meeting? Or does this count under those rules?
For just a Planning Commission meeting itself, it's 24 hours.
Okay.
I think I agree with both Mr. Anderson and Mr. Aronson. If for me to vote, I need something to look at to say, okay, this is at least, it may not be exactly the same as Tylerville, but it's close. Right now, all I've got to look at is, basically a sketch. I have no idea what the color scheme would be. I have no idea of any of that. So anything that you can get to us to say, okay, here is what it could potentially look like, then that gives us a better idea. Because what has happened, I can't speak for everybody else, but what has happened for me is, as I said, because I happen to be over that way on Tylerville Road a lot, I've seen it a lot. And when I'm thinking, when your company, when this was mentioned to me, that's the first thing that came to mind. Oh, this is, I know that building. I know what it looks like. I'm very impressed with it. But when you tell me that, well, it's not going to be like the one on Tylerville Road, and just looking at the sketch here, I don't know how far removed these sketches are from what I'm seeing on Tylerville Road. So I can't very well give an opinion or make a judgment based on that. I need to see something more to say, this is what's over there, but this is what we can give you. And I can look at it and say, well, it's close, or even that there's even it's satisfactory. But I can't say that just looking at a sketch, what amounts to a drawing.
Mr. Painter, I think, I think we've got two options that I'm hearing now. Is that the first option is to maybe table this and Mr. Anderson and your group work out something that they feel would be, that the Planning Commission would pass, or we could vote on it tonight, and more than likely, and I can't speak for the commission, more than likely, the vote's going to be that it would be, it has to be like Tylersville Road. So, I mean, I think that's maybe a question that, you can answer, or maybe you can't answer. But I would think that's probably the route that we might be going here.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment. So could I ask this? Could I ask for a reconvening of the Planning Commission for a week from today? And basically a week table to come back with a drawing to you guys in a couple of days, get out the advertisement, and then do this basically on the 21st. Could we do that?
I think that's up to Mr. Anderson. I think the planning commission will take a roll call who can make it next week, but I think it's up to Mr. Anderson, depending on his schedule and what he feels it can be done within 7 days.
Really, really quickly, before we even get to the roll call, because it sounds as though a lot of the hangup is on whether this location would be similar more aesthetically to the one presented in Tylersville. However, as I understand it, these tunnel car washes don't operate by themselves, but they have to have staff on site. So just for Mr. Painter, I don't know if you know this offhand, because this might be more on the business end of it, but are you aware if this is, I know the capture rate is smaller, but is the building as a whole much smaller than that presented in Tylersville? And do you know about the number of staff that would still be servicing this particular location? I don't know if you could answer to those.
Yeah, the building size is the same. It's the same length, same width.
It can capture the same amount of. I'm sorry.
Employees are the same. It's 2 or 3.
Okay, and does it capture the same amount of cars? So because that would speak to the amount of, not only traffic, but then revenue is particularly bringing in, and then potentially the hours that the employees will be working to operate.
Right. You hit it on the head with revenue, and that's kind of what's generating this conversation, is that according to their projections of how many people they think are going to come to the car wash that are already there and or passing by, they've got data that they've collected that kind of shows them what they can expect from a revenue stream.
Right. So
and that's what's driving this infrastructure decision on their part.
Right. So if they have multiple locations, if say Tylersville is the crowning jewel, is there anything that you could potentially show us in the immediate right now, perhaps even on Google Maps, like the location in Amelia that might be more similar to the aesthetic that we could potentially get in Forest Park, if it's not the deluxe version, but if it's the standard? Because I think everybody would feel a little bit more comfortable if they weren't looking at like a performer or a schematic, but like the brick and mortar, the finished product, and that might even expedite, if we are to go to another meeting next week, that might even expedite that process.
I can provide you a picture of that. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any out there right now, but I can certainly get one.
Okay. Yeah. Because I am generally curious, because I know that the Tylersville location has like the faux brick on the outside, just those pillars. But if it captures the same amount of cars, and then we can, they can be expecting to bring in the same amount of revenue, and we can expect to have the same amount of employees that are working at that particular location, and it doesn't necessarily disrupt traffic, doesn't necessarily disrupt noise that is not commensurate to the standard of that area. I'm not as entirely opposed to it, but I understand that there's a schedule that they have to keep, and also I have a vested interest in bringing more vitalization to that particular part of the community. So I would like to, if I could see it now, that'd be cool.
Let me see what I've got.
How you do it, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
While Mr. Painter's finding that, I just to tag on to Commissioner Brown's comments. I hope this came through in the staff report. I do think that this would be an amenity for the community. I'm the kind of person who spends a fair number of lunch hours at the car wash. And so, and right now I go to Fairfield or Springdale to do that, and it would be nice to have something close by.
Yeah, and I think these recommendations are fair and within use of the special exception, because I don't think that's being argued here, but it is the aesthetic thing, and Forest Park does have a lot to offer. However, in that particular location, if there's not a Walmart or a Lowe's like at the Tylersville location, I understand if they are changing the aesthetic of it. However, if it's the same size to get the same amount of cars brought over to that area to do more shopping and to the O'Reilly's or the other auto thing and the other stores that we have in that location, I wouldn't be opposed to it just off of those grounds alone, because people, if they wash their car, they would stop and they would potentially shop. But if it was aesthetically different than what is presented in Tylersville and much smaller, so it couldn't have the potential to hold as many cars in that area, then that would kind of be a deal breaker. But that's not the case here.
Yeah. So I've got two things that I can show you. Let me go back to share. Share screen to share. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is I guess a similar capture situation to the Tylersville, in that there's a Kroger's, pretty big Kroger's across the street. Site's here at 203 West Main. That's not it. That's the building that got demolished. So that's what the site looks like, right across from where the exit, one of the exits to the Kroger's is, and it's more like a Tylersville store. Let me move on. So there's a picture of the outside. That's more like a Tylersville store.
Okay.
And this is at Amelia?
This is in Amelia.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Painter, do you have any of them that were built like the one you're proposing with us?
The one that's, I guess, not as up to the Tylersville or Amelia level is Hamilton, but it's under construction.
Okay.
Let me see if I have a picture, any site pictures. I don't think the finish is done yet, but I'll look and see what I have. Yeah, there's no building up yet. It's all site work.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a suggestion. We'll make sure to have as much visual aid as possible in terms of real buildings. There may be an example in another state.
Oh yeah, it's true.
That the company could provide, and I'm going to request to just look at that capture rate, and we can do a little assessment on that as well. So if you wanted to go with the procedure you suggested, then I think we can do that in a week. That would be okay.
Okay. Good.
I would be okay with that, Mr. Anderson. I want, I just want to see something that's an actual picture rather than a drawing, because I can't tell very much from a drawing. And we just, one of our earlier discussions had to do with the building that was basically a garage type. And without being able to see a picture, I don't know what I'm agreeing that we're going to get. But if they're, if they've got, and I know he mentioned they have stores in other places in other states, whatever, just if he can show us pictures of something that's going to be very similar to what they're doing here, at least that gives me something to look at other than a drawing. And I would, to that extent, I would agree with Commissioner Brown. It doesn't have to look exactly like it, but if it looks nice and it's not a metal building, like one similar to the one we looked at earlier on another issue, then it's something we can work with. But I can't make that decision with just pencil drawings. I need a little bit more than pencil drawings. So I'm agreeing with you, Mr. Anderson. Have him give you pictures that you will get to us, and then we can move from there.
Okay, are there any other comments from any other commissioners? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on to FPD 20-007, Development Plan 636 Northland Boulevard, Dollar General. Mr. Anderson. Mute button.
Sorry, I forgot about that. Before I start this, I should explain. There's a little bit of confusion, I think, on the address, and it's all on our part. The actual address is 633. We've had it as 663 and 636, and I think it's just a matter of a little dyslexia on my part, maybe. So just to clarify but I think everybody does know the location. It's the former Chase Bank on Northland Boulevard. And the property is under contract by a developer for Family Dollar. Or not Family, I'm sorry. I'm going to probably make that mistake too. Dollar General. What they want to do is to demolish the building and reconfigure the site so that they can build a standard prototype building for Dollar General. And they would keep some features of the site that are currently there, and those would mainly be the landscaped areas on the east side of the property and the north side of the property along Northland. That's a good idea because those are both areas with mature and well cared for landscaping. So it would be nice to keep it rather than rip it out and start fresh. Late yesterday, we got the building prototype, and we can put it on the screen, but this is a project that I think we need a little more time on. There's a couple of things that are, I think, real issues that will not be able to be solved tonight. The first of these is that the building that Dollar General would like to build, and if I can, and I'll just keep talking while I try to share my screen. That building is a pre-engineered metal building, and it has a masonry treatment on the front. It's got metal on 3 sides. For Northland Boulevard in the Planned Business District, that is a deal breaker. That by itself. That may be able to be improved, but basically the building looks like a lot of Dollar General stores that may have been built in the past few years, maybe past 10 years. Really rather plain, very basic buildings. No windows on the sides or the back of the building. So the discussion that I had in my staff report was about the possibility of if you took the area that's occupied by the building and parking lot, and there's a service area, a service drive also. If you took that all together, it's not a perfect square, it's a rectangle, but it sort of approaches being square. And my thought was the building would be set back further than the bank. You'd have all the parking in front. And then maybe the way that the store wants to have it no matter what. I thought a more attractive possibility would be to turn that 90 degrees so that the narrow part of the building faced Northland. You would have the entrance on the side, but it would be still facing the parking lot, so there wouldn't be any additional distance that a customer would have to walk between their car and the entrance. Those would move together, if you will. And given that they have a little bit more parking on site than our zoning code requires, there's some flexibility to either move a couple of parking spaces or just delete them in order to bring in another driveway, because where they have their driveway entrance now wouldn't really make sense if you turned it all 90 degrees. All that, but with, again, with a metal building, to turn it the side is not going to help us. So that's something that I think we need to work through with the applicant. But I do not recommend that the Planning Commission, I can't recommend this plan with that prototype building that is listed. It's called Prototype D on the development plan. The applicant is on the meeting, and he can certainly address, those issues or concerns. Additionally, in my report, we also have the matter of the dumpster area being enclosed, and that on the plan that's shown, it's a little unclear what happens to the current drive-through, call it an apron. There's basically a service drive in the rear that a person can go from, like, McDonald's over to Central or over to Forest Park Plaza, basically behind all those buildings in the front. So they have the bank drive-through where that connects to the service drive. There's no driveway on this new plan, but that apron is still sort of showing there on the plan, and it just wasn't clear what that was going to be. That if we were to say pass this plan as is, something should be done with that apron to close it off, to basically dig it up and plant it and put a curb in. And I am not the best multitasker here. I've been trying to look for my email while saying this, and I can only do one thing at a time. But if you bear with me for just one moment, I think I can get it up on the screen.
Chris, do you think we really need to spend a lot of time on this evening, since this is probably something that's a no-go in the development plan about the brick, about the metal siding and everything else?
It would be better if I could show you what I've been talking about, but I wouldn't have any other comments after that.
Okay. Well, I mean, the way you described everything in your report was very detailed, and the diagrams that you had, it seemed to make sense. I mean, but it's kind of a no-go even with the metal building the way it is, and the layout and without the parking and things like that. I mean, it's kind of like when we get these things, we should be getting them as finished products versus getting them as, to-do lists on them. But I mean, again, that's my opinion with what they need to do. We'll go down to commissioners and ask them if they have any questions. Dr. Bunton?
I'm sorry, I have no questions. I agree with you though, Dave.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bunton. Mr. Smith?
No questions.
Mayor Johnson?
I agree with what you're saying. I mean, having looked at this, and there's no point in talking about something that I don't have a plan to look at. And there's no, and based on what you're saying, Mr. Anderson, about the metal buildings, I'm like Mr. Aronson. Give it to me in the form and the shape that you want me to make a judgment on, rather than something that you know you got to go back and adjust later. So I may as well wait until the adjustments are made.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I don't have any comments to add.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Anafora?
No comments, no questions either.
Okay. Mr. Bradley?
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Whoever's representative for Dollar General, if you'd like to unmute and give us your name, address, and all the pertinent information, and we'll be willing to hear from you.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Zofke, and I'm with Cross Development. We're a developer for Dollar General. We're located on 9461 Kenwood Road in Blue Ash. So happy to answer any questions that you guys may have, and kind of just to speak to a couple points that Chris made. As far as reorienting the site, I think that's something that we can look into doing. We do have a couple of obstacles. You did mention the existing landscaping that we would like to keep intact with this new development. And then there's also a pretty large storm sewer infrastructure kind of along Northland Boulevard on the north end of the site that we would like to keep intact as well. That and then the truck turn is another kind of thing that we have to contend with. It is a fairly large truck, so the way the site's oriented right now works with a truck turn. So that's something else that we'll have to look at if we are to kind of explore reorienting the site about 90 degrees. Also for that driveway apron, Chris, that is something that we would continue that curb across behind the site. It's just, so right now it's a little unclear on the site plan, but so yeah, if you guys have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Mr. Zofke, I would say that it would probably be wise just to come back at the next meeting with a more thorough plan that we could, with the concerns that Mr. Anderson has stated to you. I think that would be wise. We definitely want you there. We think it's you can bring some value to the community. But I mean, at the bank building that is there, I know it's very, very familiar with that building. I mean, it's an older building. It sat vacant for a while, but it looks nice. I mean, it's a nice looking building. And I think given the fact that I believe McDonald's is thinking about doing a new building themselves, which probably means either a major renovation or a tear down. And then we have the new tenants behind us that bought the shopping center and putting basically millions of dollars into that. I think that area is definitely up and coming. I mean, the city's bought buildings to try to enhance different businesses on Northland. So I think it behooves us to wait, and hopefully you can come back with a really good plan that everybody's excited about and that the Planning Commission can, look at and vote on. Are there any questions from the other commissioners? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Zofke, do you have any other comments or questions or anything?
No, I think just working hand in hand with Chris, kind of moving forward, will be good, and hopefully we can come to a design that works for everybody and the city of Forest Park is happy with. So look forward to that. And if there's a meeting next Tuesday, that was kind of mentioned earlier, I think that would work for us. We could be in attendance. So hopefully we can provide more as far as maybe colored elevations or renderings of what the building will look like, and kind of continue to work with Chris on the finishes.
Okay, Mr. Anderson, we're starting to really fill your plate up between now and next Tuesday. How do you feel about that?
If we can get them on, we will.
Okay.
I think that's doable.
Well, you're a multitasker, you said, so. Okay. Well, hopefully we can do that. And, I think Mr. Zofke, we try to do as much as we can to facilitate businesses coming in here. Tonight's a little different than what normally happens, but we're looking forward to new businesses coming, and we're looking forward to you and your company bringing in the Dollar General store. So if you can work with Mr. Anderson between now and next week, hopefully when we get into the commissioners meeting, that we'll be able to agree that next Tuesday we can all meet. So with that, I appreciate you coming in, and I really appreciate you looking at Forest Park to locate another really good business. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir. Okay, moving right along in the work session to FPD 20-008 development plan for 1212 West Kemper Road, the Kroger store. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, my comments should be comparatively shorter here. But this is something that we on the staff have been working towards for several years. And that is for Kroger to have an update of their store at Forest Park Square. That store dates back to 1989 or 93. In any case, about 30 years. And while it's well maintained and it's a solid building with brick, outside, the appearance is a little bit dated. Adding to that, Kroger has established a click list at this location, but it's not really set up for it in terms of how it's been done at some newer stores. So this would allow, I think, for the store to do more business that way and run it a little smoother by having a dedicated click list area. If we were in person, I would bring this to the meeting, but the plan set that we received for the building itself is probably 150-page sheets, large architectural sheets, and weighs about, 15 pounds maybe. So it's quite an extensive plan set. What the Planning Commission is being asked to approve, however, is relatively limited. Most of this work is going to happen on the inside of the building. And it's going to be in terms of new flooring, new fixtures, bringing mechanicals up to date, that sort of thing, really just modernizing the store. On the exterior, there's two changes, essentially. One is a renewed facade that would bring the look of the store closer to how Kroger looks in the stores that they build today. And that would be with the ephes front, the light colored, and ephes is a stucco-like material. That front, the Kroger sign, and then for the building itself, there's a little bit of a change in the building. It's not quite in the building footprint because it is under roof, but it's an area that is under roof but open to the air. So where near where employees have a little break area, outside break area, they would be bumping that out so that becomes part of the interior envelope of the building. And I think if there are any questions on that, the architects are here on this call and should be able to discuss that. However, that's all to just lead me to my recommendation, which is that we are very, very pleased to see this happening. This is something from an economic development standpoint that the city has been working with Kroger, the shopping center owner, which is Phillips Edison, and the city council on making happen. And as recently as 2 months ago, we thought it might be next year. 2021 was sort of a a date that had been floated earlier. And we were pleased to see that it came together so quickly. So my recommendation is for approval, and that would conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Dr. Bunton, any comments?
No comments.
Okay. Mr. Smith,
No comments.
Mayor Johnson?
Just to say, as Mr. Anderson just said, the city council, just on behalf of the city council, I'd like to thank Phillips Edison, the Kroger Company, Paul Brehm, and Chris Anderson for all the work they've been doing on getting this done. We're very excited about it, and we look forward to moving forward with this.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I just want to add my remarks to thank Kroger for their continued partnership with Forest Park. But I did have a question about the modernization on the inside as it relates to, is it just like a overall redesign of the floor plan, or will it be including additional amenities? Because I know in some Krogers they have like a Starbucks, or they even have like little cheese bars now. So I that's just general curiosity on my part.
I think that the architects will be able to answer that.
Okay.
I do recall that there are other amenities in that floor plan. Yes.
Okay.
Dr. Anaforo?
No comments.
Okay. Mr. Bradley?
None whatsoever. No comment.
Okay. The only comment I have is Kroger's has been a very good corporate citizen, a corporate partner to a lot of charities and things that they've done in the community, especially with the Chamber of Commerce in the city. And I think we're all in agreement that, anything we can do to help Kroger's, we should. So I would assume that when the architects take their time to talk, you don't really have a whole lot that you need to say. I think you'll end up getting what you need here. So with that, whoever's here from Kroger's and the architects, if you'd like to say anything, you're recognized now.
Good evening. My name is Katie Pappin. I'm with CR Architecture and Design, the project manager for the project. And then also on mute, turning on, is Josh Horn from the Kroger Company. So are you there?
Hello, everybody.
And we want to thank you for everybody for your support of the project. Obviously, everybody is excited to get this project moving and get the project started. And it's already been bid out to contractors, and everybody is on board with getting this underway and staying on schedule. As far as Mr. Brown's comment about the interior amenities, Josh, do you have any updates as to what would be on the inside other than typical updates?
Yeah, so along your lines of questioning of Starbucks, there's no Starbucks or specialty cheese or anything. Most of the departments are staying where they're at. We're just going through each department, making some updates on equipment, updates on fixtures. The entire decor for the entire interior of the building will be updated as well to our, what we call our neighborhood package that you would see in the similar remodels for this vintage store around the city. We'll also be removing the VCT tile floor and going to a polished concrete floor, and then along with the new click list and the exterior elevation update.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pappin and Mr. Horn. Any questions from the commissioners?
No, other than the fact they didn't mention a senior lane for us old folks.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We will be updating the parking lot striping for the areas for the new click list.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from any of the commissioners? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Pappin and Mr. Horn. And when in the regular planning commission meeting, we'll address this and vote on it at that time. You're welcome to stay on just in case anything comes up, because yours will definitely be voted on. Okay, moving right along, we have a Mill Road Station concept plan. Mr. Anderson, you sent that out, I think, for the future development.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Basically, I just wanted to show this to you. If you recall, last fall, when the developers of the Waycross Reserve subdivision now under construction also applied for the remaining land at Mill Road Station, which is owned by the city. And they've asked that that application be put on hold since basically November. But you know, time moves on, and we have another home builder who asked at this point not to be named, is interested in also interested in the property. And we've had a couple of meetings with them, and they've been good and productive meetings with myself, our economic development director, Paul Brem, the city manager, and the assistant city manager is essentially the group that's been meeting. And the so I asked him to give us just a preliminary layout, and he provided this, and so I'm showing it to you. I can tell you that there are some things on here that I think are good, and some things not so good. On the good side, it conforms to what we want in terms of a street layout, meaning that it connects at both of the stub streets. The one on the left is Gaylord Drive. The one on the right is, and I'm losing the name here. It's a street in Pleasant Run Farm, Springfield Township, that basically comes right up to the city line, and is stubbed out, meant to be connected to. That's the same as the plan that other plans that we've looked at with the Planning Commission have had those connections. I'm just calling the developer. The developer is interested in trying to do narrower lots. This is something that is pretty familiar with developers. So they're proposing 80-foot lots along Gaylord and 70-foot lots in the rest. I don't think that that's really a go. If you look where it's numbered 22, 23, 24, 25, those lots on the left, if you look at the lots above them on that plan, they're much larger. Those are the lots, those are in our R1 district that are along Gaylord Drive and Woodbridge Court. And those are the larger, more expensive houses in the development overall. And at a minimum of anyone that's ever looked at this property, I've said, you need to continue Gaylord as it is, meaning lot size, and layout, and essentially the size of house. Once you're not on that same street, then I think there can be some adjustment, just as there is throughout the rest of Mill Road Station. There are streets on Mill Road Station that have houses that are larger than, say, the ones on Williamson or Winston Circle. And that all fits together because they're not all on the same street. But they haven't even really done that here, and that was a little bit of a disappointment. And then I'll also point out there's, at the cul-de-sacs, the new cul-de-sacs that they're showing, and those would be on the right side of the plan. Those lot layouts are a little wonky. You've got driveways or panhandles on those lots that look like little flagpoles, that really they should be approaching the road in a perpendicular manner, And that's true for just about any side lot line in a subdivision. Our subdivision code essentially requires that. And the other lot that really is kind of strange, I don't know who would buy this really, is lot number 38, which has quite a bit of frontage, but it's a triangular lot, so it basically ends at a point. To try and fit a house footprint on there would leave you with very little in the way of usable side or rear yard. So I don't think this plan, and they haven't applied for any, I should be clear, they haven't applied for anything. I just wanted to share with you what we've been talking about and a little bit about what issues we have in terms of what developers want to do versus what we want to see. And if this all looks a little familiar, it's because we keep getting the same thing from different developers. And that's a little reality, I think, a reality check that we might want to have a little more discussion on at a later date. And that's all. I don't want to beat this to death, but just to show you. And I'd be happy if there are any other reactions on this. If you want to share those with me now, or you can, we can call and you can let me know later. But we'll be getting back to this developer. We told him that we're going to be sharing with the Planning Commission, and so he knows my reaction. And if there are any others, I'd be happy to also pass those along.
Okay, Dr. Button, any comments?
No comments or
Okay.
questions at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Button. Excuse me, Mr.
Bless you.
Smith. Thank you.
No comment at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mayor Johnson,
No comments.
Mr. Brown,
No comment.
Dr. Anaforo,
No comments.
Mr. Bradley.
No comment.
Okay. Well, nobody's did any comments. I'm not going to say anything, but that's awful hard for me not to do. But I would say, Mr. Anderson, you know, when I look at this layout here, you know, I don't know how much more land we have in Forest Park that people can build residential homes on. And, you know, we lost a big chunk of it over there on Waycross. I would just think that we should hold out for something that's comparable to what's there already. And I think we probably all feel the same way you do. So, I mean, I don't think, you know, if this came up and we were going to vote on it today, I definitely would vote against it. I think it's just, you know, it's sometimes, and I don't blame developers. I think they, you know, they want to get the most out of everything that they can, but sometimes, you know, you have to stand up and say, no, maybe this isn't the right time for it, and go with it. But the way the housing market is now, if they had the lots that we would like and they were building houses on them right now, they'd be selling like hotcakes. It's unbelievable what the market is, but again, that won't last forever. But that would be my only comment, is I would certainly think they need to come back with something that's equally as good as what we already have. And I disagree. I wouldn't downgrade it just because we turned the corner on another street. I think we should, you know, hold out for that entire parcel the same way. So that's the only comment I have. If we have no other comments, I'm going to close the work session. So with the work class session closed, I'd like to call the Forest Park Planning Commission meeting to order. And if you would have a roll call, please, Connie.
Mr. Aronson,
Here.
Dr. Bunton,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Brown,
Here.
Dr. Anaforo,
Here.
and Mr. Bradley.
Here.
Okay, that's great. We're all here tonight, which is good. We had a lot on our agenda. We'll just move right into the minutes. Has everybody read the minutes, seen the minutes, and are there any additions or changes? Hearing none, then we'll accept the minutes as written. We'll go to commissioners' reports. Connie, if you please call the roll for commissioner report.
Mr. Aronson,
No report.
Dr. Bunton? Dr. Bunton?
No report.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
No report.
Mr. Johnson?
No report.
Mr. Brown?
No report.
Dr. Anaforo?
No report.
Mr. Bradley?
No report here.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any director's report, Mr. Anderson?
Nothing beyond the written report you've received.
You don't want to repeat everything that you've already spoke about tonight?
I think everybody's ready to move on with their evening.
Okay. At this point in time, if there's any communications from the public, you'll have to, if addressing the commission, please wait for the chair to recognize you, state your name and address, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. This meeting will be recorded for ease of transcription and will be broadcast by Waycross Media. Are there any communications from the public? Okay, hearing none, we'll move into new business. FPD 20-002 site plan 580 Dewdrop Circle, Forest Park Apartments, 40 by 64 accessory structure. Is there a motion?
Yeah. Mr. Chair,
Mr. Mayor,
I would move to approve site plan 20-002 for new maintenance building at Forest Park Apartments at 580 Dewdrop Circle. If I can get a second.
is there a second?
Second.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I would respectfully request that the commissioners vote this down and vote no on this motion.
Okay. Discussion. Go by Mr. Button. Any discussion?
No discussion.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
No discussion.
Mr. Brown, well, Mr. Brown seconded. Any discussion?
No discussion.
Dr. Anaforo?
No discussion.
Mr. Bradley?
No discussion.
Okay, the only thing, I thought we were possibly gonna table this. Rather than vote it down.
I thought, yeah, it's been so many of them, I forgot. I thought we were going to, you're right. So we can't vote it down and then table it, right?
No, I think what you'd have to do is, I think Mr. Brown would have to rescind his second, and you'd have to rescind your motion.
Right.
Actually, I think it was Mr. Smith that seconded.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Smith, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It'd have to be Mr. Smith would have to rescind it.
Rescinded the second.
And I would rescind the motion.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I would, on FPD 20-002, I would move to postpone, I believe is what we said, right?
Yes.
Table it, yeah.
Table to further notice.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Smith, second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Connie, if you'd call the roll, please.
Mr. Aronson?
Yes.
Dr. Bunton? Dr. Bunton?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
And Dr. Anaforo?
Yes.
Thank you, Connie.
Uh-huh.
Moving to new business, FPD 20-006, special exception 11130 Hamilton Avenue, rainstorm car wash. Is there a motion?
Chair, I would move that we postpone this motion until our next meeting, and that after we've gone through this new business, at the end of the new business, that we decide on when and what time that meeting would be.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Been a motion to postpone. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second the motion.
Okay. Dr. Bunton, second.
Second, yes.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Connie, if you'd call the roll, please.
Mr. Aronson,
Yes.
Mr. Brent, is Dr. Bunton,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Anaforo.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Wait a
Connie.
minute, you missed me again.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Mr. Bradley,
Yes.
you vote twice this time, please.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to FPD 20-005, Development Plan for 1130 Hamilton Avenue. I believe that's not the development plan, but that would be the special exception.
Special exception.
Again, I would move to postpone.
Okay, Mayor Johnson moved to postpone. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Smith, second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Connie, if you call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley,
No, yes, okay.
Mr. Aronson,
Yes.
Dr. Bunton,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
and Dr. Anaforo.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Connie.
Mhm.
We're going to move on to FPD 20-007, Development Plan for 633 Northland Boulevard, Dollar General.
I would move to postpone this development plan for Dollar General until further notice.
Okay, Mayor Johnson has moved to table this. Is it, and Mr. Smith is second? Any discussion? Hearing none. Connie, if you would call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley,
Here.
Mr. Aronson,
Yes.
Dr. Bunton,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Anaforo.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Motion's passed. Moving on to our last item, FPD 20-008, Development Plan 1212 West Kemper Road, Kroger's. Is there a motion?
I would move to approve development plan minor revision 20-008 for Kroger at 1212 West Kemper Road.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved
I'll
and
second it.
second to approve this plan. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. There was no other comments on that, I don't think. No, that was it. Hearing none. Connie, if you'd call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley,
Yes.
Mr. Aronson,
Yes.
Dr. Bunton,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Anaforo.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Well, I appreciate everybody coming tonight. I hope everybody's taking good care of themselves in these unpredictable
Harrison,
times.
Mr. Hanson,
Yes.
we need to set that meeting.
Oh, okay, you're right, you're right. Who would be, what commissioners would be available next Tuesday at 7 PM to have another planning commission meeting?
Sherman Bradley will be available.
Okay, maybe we call the roll. Connie, can you call it, please?
Okay. Mr. Aronson,
Yes.
Dr. Bunton,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Anaforo.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna have thank you, Connie. We're gonna have another meeting next Tuesday at 7 o'clock to discuss probably whatever Chris puts on the agenda. But probably those two items with the car wash and the dollar store. So with that, and I just like to say to everybody, I think the meeting went real well tonight. It was a long evening, long meeting. I think we asked some very good questions, and I just hope everybody's taking care of themselves and wearing their masks. People like when I wear a mask, so I mean, it covers part of my face. But with that, I'll call the meeting. If we have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay. Well, I'll see everybody next Tuesday at 7 o'clock, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.